Hello, everyone. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the weekly assignment for this course. As you know, we have a reading each week. We have a discussion board in which we exchange our ideas about the reading, and then there's a weekly assignment that needs to be done. And that assignment is always the same. That is, it should be applied to each reading. But there's some problematic aspects of the assignment that I wanted to point out or explain or let you know what my idea was behind wording things as I did and what I expect you to do. Okay, so the assignment for each week's reading is always the same. And here is the prompt or the question or the rubric for it. What is the main conclusion of this text, if there is one? What is the reasoning that leads the author to this conclusion? And is the argument a good one? Why or why not? Now, that's a lot to do in 2 pages. I've made the suggested length for the assignment between 250 and 500 words. I didn't want you to have to write a long essay every week. But that's pretty tough to do in a page or two. But let's, do your best. We'll see how it goes. But a few things I want to say, qualifications about this assignment. First, main conclusion, if there is one. Well, all of these texts contain reasoning. There's no question about it. They're expository texts. They're texts that are trying to arrive at truth, certainly, but are argumentative in nature. So there's reasoning there. There's going to be no lack of that. But it may be difficult, and more difficult with some texts than others, to say, well, this is the one main conclusion. Maybe there isn't one main conclusion. Maybe there's a set of conclusions, related conclusions. Maybe there's a set of ideas. And another, so it may not be so easy to identify one specifiable conclusion that is the conclusion of the text. It may not be that simple. I want to acknowledge that. So there are certain decisions that you need to make, maybe some choices you need to make. And maybe there's many conclusions or many ideas that are proposed in a text, and then you have to decide what the most important one is. And another way of, I think, approaching that question would be, say, instead of saying, what is the main conclusion of this text, you may ask yourself, what is the overall point? Or what is the main point that this author is trying to make? That would probably be just as good, but I wanted to emphasize the logic here. That is, the idea that we have conclusions that are based upon arguments, and there are premises, and there are conclusions, and there are arguments that support things. I mean, I wanted to emphasize that, but a way of widening it up, if you're having trouble identifying a main conclusion that does justice to the text, is ask yourself, what is the main thing that this author is trying to get across here? And that may help you to clarify for yourself, what you really think the main conclusion is. So, and then when we ask what is the reasoning that leads the author to this conclusion, you may ask yourself, well, okay, what is the overall point here? And how does the author make this point or try to make this point? That would be the other way of putting the second part. What is the reasoning that leads the author to this conclusion? How does the author try to establish their overall point? And then finally, is the argument a good one? Why or why not? That's where you have sort of completed the first step of saying, well, this is what this text is about. This is what this philosopher is trying to get across, and here's how they try to get it across, or here's their big idea or conclusion, and here's their support for it. But then there's your own second step, is your own critical evaluation of of how well they actually made their case, and that's a matter of your putting your critical skills to work. Sorry for the interruption. So the second part of it is very important, because then you're evaluating the success of the argument, or the success of, generally speaking, whether or not the author actually made a convincing case for what they wanted to put over. So yes, your work must have an account of the argument. its conclusion and the reasoning that supports it. Or your work must have an account of what was the main idea or point that the author was trying to make. And sorry. And what was the main overall point the author was trying to make, and how were they trying to make it? What was the main conclusion, and what was the reasoning that supports it? It must also have an assessment of that argument. That's the second part. Is the argument a good one? Why or why not? So really, to complete this assignment, you really have to do both of those things. It has to have these elements in it. So here are just some basic ideas. Number one, give yourself time to do the reading. That's really important. Nothing can replace that. I will be making videos for each reading, but they will not spell out in absolute detail everything about the reading. They're meant there to give you some hints or some help, or maybe explain a few difficult points or make a few things more clear, allow you to put the reading perhaps in a little historical context, give you an idea of what the subject matter is. But you have to do the reading, and you have to discover the reading for yourself. So give yourself time to do that reading. If you're trying to do all these assignments at the end of the week, and you've put off actually even addressing the reading till the end of the week so you can get the assignments done, you won't do good work, because you simply have to. These are not easy readings. These are very thoughtful readings. These are deep readings, so you have to spend time with them. Keep in mind that your comprehension of the content of the text is crucial for evaluating its argument. It's one of my big points about this, way I'm approaching this course, is that you cannot separate form from content when it comes to critical reasoning. The content and form are not things that can be really thought of differently. So to do a good job in terms of the formal aspect of giving a critique of these texts, you simply have to understand them. You have to comprehend them, and that won't come unless you spend time reading them. Number two, give yourself time to write the weekly assignment. Give yourself definite time. This is a graded assignment, which should be in essay form. Doesn't have to be in any kind of really overly formal thing or have footnotes, but it's in essay form, and should not be a loose assemblage of notes. That is, should be a focused discussion, which is kind of a unitary discussion. So you need to give yourself time to compose that. Again, it's like I said before about the readings. You simply have to give yourself time to do these things. And thirdly, the suggested length for this assignment is between 250 and 500 words. That's like between 1 and 2 pages. That's pretty, that's not a lot of time. That's not a lot of space to do what I'm asking you to do. So clearly, certain decisions need to be made by you as a writer, simplifying things, generalizing things, realizing that you're not trying to say everything that there is to say about this particular reading. What you're doing is trying to identify what you consider its overall point or main conclusion to be, what you consider the basic essential argument in support of that conclusion or in support of that main point that the author gives, and whether or not you think that it's a good argument. What do you think that the author sufficiently supported their point, and and how so? So of course, your answer could be they didn't, and here's why, or here's some weaknesses in their argument, because that's what we're really doing when we critically evaluate things. We're asking whether the reasoning is strong or weak, whether there are problems. If I say, well, it's going to rain tomorrow, and you ask me why, I say, well, it rained today. That may not be such a great reason to think it's going to rain tomorrow. I just gave that argument, but that's the kind of thing I mean when I say, you're evaluating the argument. So I'll be doing other videos, I'm sure, to try to clarify just, maybe how I want you to go about these assignments. But it's good enough for now. Get started.